I had a middle ear problem this year, and I'm deaf in one ear, and I can't hear out the other ear. So tonight is just a little bullshit session, and I have a fellow here by the name of Dan that is going to field. He's right over there holding the microphone up.
Woo! Yeah!
He's going to be my linked hearing. So as things come up through the evening, it'll wind up, it'll be a question and answer session. Because it's sort of boring to hear talk without you having any input. Because you're part of the industry. And talking about the industry, I mean, I think that's sort of a phony goddamn name, industry. That sounds like manufacturing and all of that. Tattooing is an art form, and it happens to be probably the most anointed profession that anybody could be given in this world, being a tattoo artist, because you have freedom, you make good money, you can practice all your eccentricities, so it's wonderful. Some of you guys are going a little bit too far with this bullshit about up the neck, all over the hands and stuff. You're going to be sick puppies someday. I mean, seriously. You can see how many tattoos I have showing. Well, that's how many I want. And I would only tattoo people where I had tattoos. So your hands, your face, your neck, your feet are free, and your balls. I got my dick tattooed, but that's another story. It's my dick, so I can do anything I want to with it. And it hates me because it says, well, I won't even say what it says. So, back to it. I got my first tattoo in 1949, and World War II was just over with. I was 10 years and 2 months old to the day when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. So I remember all of the Second World War. And as guys came back from the war, they'd have a tattoo dribbled around here and there, you know. There wasn't any sleeves, there wasn't any nicks or anything. It was just like an anchor on the arm or something like that, you know. And so tattooing became to me, meant to me, that they were travel marks. Their tattooing is no more to me than stickers on my luggage. And so 1946 I got my first tattoo, and then 1949 I started tattooing professionally, and I've been with it ever since. And will never be in the history of tattooing anybody, and I'm not saying this being conceited, I'm just saying that it's the goddamn truth, that there'll be nobody that will ever be presented the time and space that I had in tattooing. Because when I got into tattooing, World War II was just over with. The Korean War was coming up. I started tattooing in '49. I went in the Marines in 1951, went over and played Marine in Korea, and asked me how many, no, we won't get into political shit about wars and stuff nowadays, because fighting for peace is like fucking for virginity. It don't work. You just make new enemies. But, so that's the end of my political statements. What I just said was very true. You know, who in the hell has set us up? Oh, I'm off of that. I promise. We're talking about tattooing. And tattooing is sort of like, tattooing doesn't have any real nationality. You know, tattooing is like, well, there was a guy named Hildebrand, supposedly, that was back in the 1850s in the United States, a tattoo artist that tattooed, but he went between the Union forces and the Confederate forces during the Civil War and tattooed most of them. And out in some of the Pacific Islands, which you're one of them, if a tattoo artist was captured in warfare or something, and if he sort of, you have to realize that cultures change from island to island and mountain range to mountain range, wherever the world is. There's like United States that covers one whole area and stuff like that in European countries. This was like little enclaves of people. That if the tattoo artist would practice his trade with whoever captured him, then he could pick up a new wife, have new children. What a deal. What a deal. So anyhow, so tattooing is sort of like, it doesn't have a real true nationality. It's an entity of its own. And being a tattoo artist is the closest thing that the general public will ever have to a witch doctor. And if you're sitting in your chair tattooing it daily, how many people are tattoo artists in here? A whole fucking bunch. So you feel that through your customers, this adoration, this respect, this awe. And I know I felt it way back when. I don't know if you feel it now or not, because there is so many tattoo artists nowadays, you know. When I started tattooing, there was probably each major city in the United States had one or two tattoo artists. There's a gentleman sitting back here, way back with a music stand, that him and I have been acquainted through correspondence and everything, and we just met today for the first time after the early 1960s, we got together with correspondence. And this was when you had to write on a piece of paper, you had to stick it in an envelope, you had to lick a stamp, and then wait for 3 weeks till it got delivered. And he tattoos in Australia today because New Zealand, his direct quote was that he wanted his children to have a better chance. Is that true? His name's Ray Shuttlesworth. Is that true?
Ray Shuttlesworth.
I'm mispronouncing it.
You're right.
Okay. He sent me a tattoo machine. Excuse me. He's a self-taught tattoo artist. He was a slow learner. That's just a little side humor. But anyhow, it was from an alarm clock that he stole from his father. And he took the apparatus off of it, the dial and everything else. And then he stole some needles from his mother. And at one time, he was the furthest southerly tattoo artist in the world. And there was only 4 tattoo artists in all of New Zealand. True? Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm not delivering misinformation to these folks, because they get enough of it daily. So, God, we could just go on and on here, because tattooing is an all-consuming subject. And so I was very fortunate because I started tattooing in 1949, and then I was young, dumb, full of cum, and I joined the Marines in 1951, and went off to the Korean War, and but was very fortunate because, and I'm not religious at all, but I'm going to say the tattoo God directed me. Now, if there's a God, and there's some people believe, no, I'm not going to get on that either. Politics, religion, and tattooing are the 3 most controversial subjects in the world. You're either for it, against it. There's no middle of the road. And you know that. Like with religion, boom, boom. There's no middle of the road. Politics, no middle of the road. Tattooing, no middle of the road. You either like tattoos or you don't like tattoos. Nobody says, how many people went home and their mother raised shit about you getting tattooed? I mean, ooh. boy, I mean, there's an army of you out there. Well, you have to realize that mothers don't like tattoos for a practical purpose, because a child is a mother's ultimate artwork. And no artist likes to have their artwork altered by another artist. So that's the reason that mothers don't like tattoos. So now, the child that's born today winds up probably suckling a tattooed bosom. He's going to wind up with an eye affliction because he's trying to get this picture in focus and getting his daily due, right? Then he gets to kindergarten, or she gets to kindergarten, and the kindergarten teacher is pulling up her skirt, showing a butterfly that she's got tattooed on her ass, right? So then, their whole life is they're deluged in tattoos. And so when that kid grows up, the last fucking thing he wants, I'm sorry, I don't try to not use profane language in any of my talks, because it, well, I don't know. But they say it on television all the time. And, but anyhow, that's the last thing the kid is going to want to do, because they don't want to take him, go to what the establishment does. If you went back 40 years ago, you had the hippies. And the hippies said never trust anybody that's over 30 maybe? Something like that. I went through that era. I think I was about 30. And that was one of my, you know, back to the business of having the greatest time span that any tattoo artist ever had in the whole wide world was, I started tattooing in 1949, and I went in the service, and then I tattooed I was in the Marines, and I was in Korea, and I was in Japan, and I was in 2 or 3 different places in the United States. And the time that a tattoo shop in any of the places I was at needed a tattoo artist was on payday. So I could go into town, tattoo, pay somebody to stand by guard duty, which means walking up and down a goddamn fence, guarding a perimeter, and for peanuts. So the TG looked after me, if there's such a thing as a TG. And so then I got out of the service and tattooed down in Long Beach, California with Burt Grimm. That was a great experience, because probably one of the greatest rompinest, stompinest tattoo artists that ever lived. That guy can cover up more space in a quicker amount of time than anybody going. And nowadays, well, you have old school and you have new school. Now, new school, they can't even spell goddamn school. S-K-O-O-L. Now, I'm working on a new brand of tattooing, and we're going to only use brown outlines, and we're going to call it Old Stool. So only a joke, as you know. So then I went back and I worked with Burt Grimm. I didn't like Long Beach, California, because it was in Los Angeles, and it's a goddamn 10,000 square miles of 2-story buildings and freeways that are clogged with people. So a guy came through from Anchorage, Alaska, and was opening an arcade up, and he was a friend of Burt Grimm's, and so I went to Alaska and I tattooed up there. And so Mr. Shuttlesworth, up there over here, most southern tattoo artist in the world at one time. You might still be if he was still there. Somebody's further down the block. You never know. Tattooing used to be special. I mean, honestly, it used to be special. It was like a certain contingency of people that got tattooed. And they were sort of grouped into drunken sailors and fallen women. Now, I'll tell you, they're a hell of a lot more fun to tattoo than yuppies. And so they come in and they got a design that they show to you on a cell phone that they picked up somewhere. They've watched some mealy-mouthed goddamn television show that where they go in and they have a back piece designed in 20 minutes and put on in 2 hours. You know, we all know that that is not true, and it takes a lot longer than that. But, you know, tattooing was, well, 4 people in New Zealand was tattooing when he started tattooing Ray. And so every major city in the United States had 1 or 2 tattoo artists in it. Major cities. There wasn't anybody out there in Omaha, Nebraska that was, well, there was Omaha, Nebraska. Your major cities of the United States had tattoo artists. Major cities had maybe 1. But it was the idea now they're in malls, and you gotta call up, make an appointment, you gotta go get your aura read. And getting your aura read is really important. I'm sure it's really is. They won't even, in my own tattoo shop in San Francisco, they won't let me come in there during opening, you know, when the shop is open, because they think I'm negative for business. And I don't even know why people get goddamn tattoos today. I got mine. How many do you see? I got more tattoos than anybody in this room. And I won't make no bets on that, because there's some of you guys that's got a bunch sticking out. But I guess nowadays that when people come in and get tattooed, the first place they want to get tattoos is on the hands or the neck. They have got nothing else anywhere else. So that's so has anybody got any questions? We got a gentleman over here we're paying big money to, which is nothing. If you have a question, if you'd like to ask. Is this working?
I was just, well, you answered a lot of the ones that I already had already, but I was just wanting to know from when you began, and as you say, you were tattooing at a time that was very different nowadays. Do you think that it's the attitudes that have changed, or the fact that there's so much different technology available for tattooing, and what do you see as the major changes? Is it the attitudes towards tattooing that's changing the way people are deciding to get them, or the TV shows, or just time itself?
A combo. But the combo, like people say, oh, tattooing is elevated. That's BS. Tattooing hasn't elevated in the general public, the great unwashed minds out there that don't really care for tattooing or anything else. They just goddamn gave up. They've just deluged with tattoos. They get on the bus, a little old gray-haired lady with a bun. How many people march by that's got tattoos? They just gave up. They realized they were shoveling doo-doo against the tide. And so with my career, as I noticed it, was that the first big shot in the arm that tattooing got was in 1960. Now, I started tattooing in 49. I went in the service. I was gone for 4 years. I came back. I actually quit tattooing. I came back. I was stationed at Treasure Island in San Francisco, and San Francisco was my home turf. And so I went into town and was supplementing my income by tattooing. And back then, you didn't go in and look for a job in a tattoo shop, because there wasn't tattoo shops. Most of them were in arcades, and you dealt with the arcade owner. and it was sort of a leading seaman. Leading seaman. The ones that sail on boats. That sort of tattooing was done in arcades and everything else. So you didn't go in and look for a job. You went in and asked if there was a chair available. So they'd say, well, there is a chair available from 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. So that's when you went in and held that chair down. And if somebody come in and got tattooed during that period, it was yours. Or if there was 2 or 3 of you in there. It depends on how many, and everybody, everything, it was all flash art. It was none of that stuff coming in, they wanted custom work and stuff. You pick them on, we'll pick them. You pick them out, we'll pick them on. That was sort of the saying in those days, which was wonderful. What a brainless goddamn job that is. You're sitting in there picking a booger. A guy comes in, looks around the wall and says, I'll take that one. Okay, you look over and it says sheet 27. You get in the drawer, you get a stencil for sheet 27. You get the design out, you stencil on the arm, and you motor it on. That is a tattoo. They're not bringing it on a cell phone, showing you this, showing you that, and everything else. That's a finger down the throat, So you guys think you gotta do it? I haven't. So anyhow, so tattooing was floating on real nice, and then all of a sudden, type B hepatitis was identified in New York, and they outlawed, I don't know, it's 5 or 7 boroughs in the greater New York, Brooklyn, boom, boom, Queens, all that business. And that was the first time that tattooing ever got any type of real worldwide publicity. And that was when it was outlawed. And it was like 9-10 million people jerked out of the loop. And it could have been a domino effect that went and sped all over the United States and knocked tattooing out completely. And I'm setting out in everybody's favorite city, San Francisco. So it wound up that the state of Florida put a prohibition against it, but it wasn't, they didn't outlaw it completely. They put in there, worded it in lawyer talk. You know that 9 out of 10 lawyers give the rest a bad name? So it winds up that it said that tattooing had to be put on with the auspices. Now go look up dictionary auspices. That means, what is that? That's a very flexible term. It should have been in the Bible somewhere. That under the auspices of a physician. Now South Carolina outlawed it completely. The state of Oklahoma was outlawed before that. The state of Indiana outlawed tattooing. So it could have been a domino effect and they could have swept it out. So I'm sitting out in Frisco, and I figured if they're gonna put me out of business, they're gonna know who they put out of business. And so I became media friendly. And so I was the most fortunate guy in the world because that was when the news desk at newspapers or something would send out people that wanted to dig up more dirt about tattooing probably, and then they'd come down to my shop. Or most tattooers sort of hid under a canopy that if they stayed up a dark, dirty street and kept their mouth shut and kept a low profile, that the big bad man that put them out of business wouldn't find them. And I felt that was wrong. You want to present a good image, be media friendly, and let them know that tattooing wasn't invented by the devil and it's not practiced by ogres. It's just a legitimate art form. you know, and there's just a certain amount of people that get tattooed. And back then it was a hell of a lot smaller than it is now. You want to beware now, because tattooing, when I got into tattooing and everything else, it was sort of a compulsion. It was sort of like, there was just a certain amount of people wanted to get tattooed. To have it, to me, they were like stickers on my luggage or something. It was like, you had to go earn your tattoo. You just didn't go down to the mall and get one after you had your aura read and all this bullshit. And you wound up, now tattooing is what, let me get back to the rest of the story. And then we'll get into where you're at today. And so you can all shake and knock your knees together. So then, in 1966, there was a guy in Chicago, Illinois, by the name of Richard Speck, that went and killed 8 nurses. I don't know if he raped them or not, but he murdered 8 nurses one night in a dormitory. And he had a devil with "born to raise hell" written around it. And you'd be surprised how many idiots come in a tattoo shop and wanted that tattoo duplicated. You know, like the word "dumb bastard" was not utilized thoroughly till the human race got here. And so anyhow, so both of these are ultra negative to tattooing, but it just shows how strong tattooing is today, and what kind of a goddamn indelible impulse and impression it makes on us. Because it goes back long before recorded history, tattooing. It's like, I don't know, I can't even explain it. I've been around it longer than anybody in this room, of the strength that tattooing has. I mean, like, a tattoo is, it's external decorations for internal feelings. It's like letting, you probably let yourself know who you are when you have the tattoo put on, but you're also communicating it to other people. It's too heavy for me to even understand, or especially to set it forth to. But anyhow, then women's liberation came by, and that was in the mid-1960s, just after Richard Speck had screwed these 8 nurses up and cha-cha-cha. And so tattoos, I sort of believe in a way, are better suited for women than they are men, because women paint their toenails and they curl their hair and they mess with everything in between. I mean, women are concerning the gender that is concerned with themselves. Guys like a tattoo so they go down to pool hall and roll their sleeve up and look tough, maybe. A macho angle of it. But ladies like it for like a beautifying. So women's liberation came by. I love women. I mean, I just think women are the greatest in the world. And they wanted small, colorful designs like rosebuds, butterflies, and things like that. They smell so much nicer, and they have a nice, softer combination. You don't have to smell Harley Davidson oil on them, or listen to them about their flathead isn't working right or something. Yeah, you know. So it was a perfect marriage, and that was so that now tattooing became a milder and gentler art when women's liberation came by, and so that was so that it just went. But people are never content with little rosebuds and butterflies. I am a firm believer of why bedrooms have light switches on. Because I'm really not, you know, women, you know, they fired my rockets of being as well known as I am, or whatever I am. But I still like rosebuds and butterflies, a little accent. But now they just get too carried away, a lot of them. There's still the rosebud and butterfly crew out there. The little accent. When they're walking down the nude beach and somebody's looking at their privates, they got a little butterfly next to it, they can say, they're looking at the butterfly. So anyhow, that was, I just got the best career in the world. And now I'm standing here at a stage in New Zealand, of all goddamn places. First time I was ever in New Zealand. I've been to Australia a few times. Been to Borneo to a tattoo convention. I've been all over the world. In fact, if anybody's flying on American Airlines, I have an article that's in American Airlines in-flight magazine now. And I got like 1,800,000 miles of air that's went under my butt since I started traveling. So I'm the most fortunate guy in the world. And I don't know, I could probably sit up here and bullshit all night. Here's my drink. I have a semi-little, I'm not saying this under feel sorry for me or anything, but I'm 84 years old. And I've had the greatest life in the world. And I wish my body would give it up. Because the longer it sticks around, the more trouble it. So I had a mental air problem. But I used to fly. And it wound up that, well, it's like riding, having hot rods and stuff when you fly airplanes, you like hot rods. And I flew a lot of noisy airplanes and messed my ears up, and then all this flying with commercial airlines. So I went deaf totally in one ear, and I got a hearing aid in the other. I was riding around the car today, and all this goddamn that turn signal, what a pain in the ass that is. You know. So, I just sort of have a deal with my body every night when I go to bed that as long as you stay around, the more grief you're going to cause me, because if you have something wrong with you, then I got to go to the hospital with you. So you're an invasion of my goddamn privacy. The body. So if you don't want to wake up in the morning, please don't. It won't hurt my feelings in the world, because I've had the most whole, complete, wonderful life in the whole wide world. So if nobody has any other questions.
I think you want to answer them.
Excuse me?
I think you want to answer them.
I'll answer.
Yeah.
I'll stay here all night.
I just wanted to know, you've had a pretty long career and you've worked with a lot of great tattooers and met a lot of great tattooers. I just wanted to know, like, who would be, if you had to pick one, who would be like the one tattoo you would say kind of changed it all for you, or who you thought was like the biggest, like the most important to the industry at the time?
Are you saying that who do I respect more than anybody?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Well,
Simple
you
words.
have to realize that art has a style to it. And back when I was in and around as a young puppy, tattooing, there was some super characters back then. There's probably as many characters there is today, but you can't see the forest for the trees. You know, I would say that probably Bert Grimm. Bert Grimm was the rompin'est, stompin'est son of a bitch that ever run a tattoo shop. He tattooed my torso and put a lot of tattoos on me. And he could cover up my back piece, which everybody saw my back piece. It's two eagles fighting in a sunburst. It took 14 hours to put on. Now, nobody in this room has heard of a back piece that's put on in 14 hours. I mean, and then when I got through, I asked Bert, I said, he had 3 back pieces. One was a gorilla with a snake. One was the Battle Royal. And they were $4.50 a piece back then. This was back in the late 1950s. So I asked Bert, I said, when he got through with my back piece, how much to owe you? And he thought he put his thumbs in his suspenders, and he went and hawed, and he said, well, I want $150. You know, but I really admire Bert Grimm and really accredit him with my people handling skills. Because Bert never said this, I'm the guy that put the words to this, but you never let an asshole know that he's an asshole. You you don't ever get even with your mouth, you get even with that tattoo machine. You get an asshole with that tattoo shop, man. I could make you within a minute either defecate, vomit, or pass out. And I don't care which one it is. Sure gonna do it. You know, when people say, well, that's mean. No, that's not mean. That's just the way life is. So I would say Bert Grimm. But there was also some other great people. I'm not taking no credit away from nobody. But Bert was the luminary. He was the luminary in my life. And back to the old stool, and the new stool. Tattoos a tattoo is more than a pretty picture on the skin. It's like it has a lot of meaning to it. It's like you just don't run in and get your karma read and let this thing. The word alcohol and chicken shit has got more people tattooed than any two items in the whole wide world, I think. At least that's the way it should be. Working in a tattoo shop all those years, to me, was like working in a nightclub in a way. I was working with people that was coming in that was off duty, was not at their job. Most people hate their job. So they're out having a good time in the evening. Okay, so if you're having a good time in the evening, you might have a drink. Bingo. I'm having one. And so you're in a good mood, and you're in a good nature. You're not sitting there just having people hate their wife, hating their kids, and hating their job that you're dealing with 8 hours a day. And you got a kaleidoscope of people that come in. So working in a tattoo shop to me was like working in a nightclub or something. It was like it's an enchanted profession. And I think I started off with, and I got off with quickly, but I'm going to get back on it, which I think is going to be edifying to you, is that tattooing went from a compulsion of a certain amount of people want to get a tattoo because it seemed like the right thing to do, or you wanted. Then now tattooing has turned into a fad and a trend, and fad and trends end. And when a fad and a trend end, I remember back 30, 40 years ago that every SOB that you met on the street was wearing bell-bottom trousers. How many bell-bottom trousers do you run across today? You don't? You got no bell-bottom trousers. You own a pair?
He does.
But no, everybody, and God, I see pictures of me back in those days with bell-bottom trousers on. You look like a dummy, but everybody had them. So it's just the idea that I think that one of these days, and be careful and save your money. The bush is maybe not going to stay right forever. And just prepare yourself for when tattooing sort of boom, boom, boom. And now it's oversaturated with tattoo artists and tattoo shops. Prostitution and tattooing are the only non-degree professions that I know of. They're both just about as easy to get into. One just has to know how to lay flat on your back. And the other one knows how to pick up a magazine and order a catalog. You know, and I'm sort of playing it down because being a tattooer is a skilled profession. But to be just a tattooer doesn't take too much. And a tattoo artist only has to be as good as, you only have to make one person happy in this world, and that's your customer. That's all you have to be. You don't have to get in motorcycle magazines or tattoo magazines or have smoke blown up your bum by your colleagues and everything else, how great you are. You just have to make that one person happy, and that's your customer. So, I'm not playing tattooing down, don't get me wrong. It's treated me well. I love it. And I wouldn't be here. It's the end of the earth. I've been to Australia a few times. I've been to Borneo. Went to a tattoo convention in Borneo. Believe that or not. In fact, we're in Borneo and we had a weekend off. And then the next weekend was going to be in New York City. So I told the guy I was traveling with, Bill DeMichael, he's a photographer, that hell, we got a weekend off while we're in a neighborhood. Let's run down to Australia. The neighborhood, it took 7 hours and a 747 running wide open to go from Borneo. I thought that Pacific Ocean was all crowded together. And there's a lady I want to go visit this weekend, and I'm sure you're all familiar with her. Her name was Beverly Nichols. And then she became a model, and she became Cindy Ray. And then from Cindy Ray, she married her tattoo artist, and his name was Danny Robinson, so she became Beverly Robinson. Now, is everybody familiar with Bev?
Yeah.
You know, she was probably the first tattoo icon in the whole wide world, because she had a photographer by the name of Barnum. Got Barnum like P.T. Barnum. I'm not pronouncing the name right, but it did start with a B, an English guy, and he did mass publicity for her, and she became the best known tattoo person in the world in the early 1960s. So I brought her over to, I have a tattoo art museum in the United States and the Tattoo Hall of Fame, and so we brought her over a few years ago and put her into the Tattoo Hall of Fame. And she does not realize the icon that she is outside of Australia. In the United States, her name is just revered. But and then she's not really particularly proud of that part of her life. She became a very competent tattoo artist. Used to fly with the Navy's ships would come into Tasmania. They would fly her over to Tasmania and she'd work over there because she's a no-nonsense traditionalist tattoo artist. Flash artist, you know? And nowadays you don't run across that too much. But that's what I was. So, anybody else?
I was just wondering about Bert Grimshop, if you have any stories that you could share with us, any stories that stand out in that time that you spent in Long Beach?
In Long Beach, down on the Pike.
Yeah.
Well, the Pike was a permanent year-round carnival, and that's where I learned it. So Captain Don, who was a sword swallower, fire eater, tattooed man, he came out in I was down in 1955, 56. And he came out there and got a lot of tattoos and everything else, and was just learning how to swallow swords. So there was a permanent sideshow there, a guy named Tony Marino. He wasn't a tattooed man, but it was like about 6 blocks of nothing but carnival stuff. They had the roller coaster, the Cyclone Racer. So it was like working on a midway, a nightclub midway. which I enjoyed working down the pipe. And Bert was down the street, and I went to work for him in a small shop until I proved myself, and I was moved into the big shop with him and 4 or 5 other tattooers. And I worked at a shop that he owned that was 5 foot by 7 foot, which that's all you need is 5 foot by 7 foot, because you only have one customer, one person to satisfy and make happy, and that's all you need in the shop at one time. Because you wind up tattooing people. Think about this. You tattoo them, put a couple tattoos on them. Now they want to come by and hang out and suck up the ambiance. They're not spending no money. They just want to come by and suck up the ambiance, you know? So when you only got 5 foot by 7 foot to play with, you lose them. But you had the Cyclone Racer was down there. It was like, kind of Saturday, Sunday, Fridays was just jam-packed, sort of almost wall-to-wall people. And I used to have a sign on my shop. There was a rail about, when you went in the door, there was a bench there, and I used to keep my batteries under there because I tattooed with 2 6-volt batteries, series. They, 2 people could sit down. And then there was a little bit of a rail, and then I tattooed sideways in back of that rail. Because that's all you need is 5 foot by 4 foot for a crib for tattooing. That's all you need. And so people would come by and tattooing wasn't acceptable as it is today. I mean, people hadn't given up then. And they would sort of admonish you, and I had a sign that said, tattooing is my business. But no, if you don't like tattoos, that's your business. Tattooing is my business. If you don't like tattoos, scram. It wasn't that, that's too goddamn long. I'd have to think about it. It was a lot shorter than that. But no, let's see, tattooing is my business. If you don't like tattooing, that's your business, scram. Which is true, you know. But a lot of people that were retired in Los Angeles would come out there and they'd come by and they'd admonish you, you know. Think that you were depriving people of their souls or something, you know. People believe in souls. With every soul, you have to believe that there's a heel also. Okay, bingo. I think we've run out of bingos. Oh, there's a gentleman over there. Gentlemen?
For like equipment and things back when you first started, what did you use and how did you communicate with the other tattooists to share?
Yeah, we're talking just a little bit.
Sorry. What kind of equipment and things did you use and communicate with the other tattooists to share what you'd use? And I mean, these days we just jump on the internet and pass on the rights the next day.
Well, you asked me how things have changed.
No, like what did you use? Like the inks, the different ways of needles. Did you let the other tattooists know if you'd come across something good or?
Hell no, it was trade secrets. No, trade secrets, you know. It's, tattooing is way too public today. You know, it's way too public to what I knew. You know, it's, there hasn't been really any great, as far as I'm concerned, any great advancements in tattooing. The equipment's basically the same. The rotary machine has now come in. There's I don't know how many people's using the rotaries. Boom, 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 boom. You know that the school down in Shreveport, Louisiana, that teaches tattoo artists are now entering and teaching rhesus monkeys how to tattoo. But they have to bring their own rotary. Because rotary machines were not a viable piece of tattoo equipment until they made a mechanical change in it. And I'm not going to go through about it, but well, it's just too long and lengthy, about how they made a mechanical change and redirected the stroke of the eccentric and everything. But you knew where to buy pigments. You knew how to mix your own pigments, and you didn't tell anybody anything. I built a lot of my tattoo collection out of trading a bottle of ink that worked really good for an old tattoo machine or something. But you know, it was close mouth. I mean, you just didn't go buy some tattoo magazine and learn all about it. You know, and the one thing that tattooing is lost today and will be lost forever was the mystique. I mean, tattooing had a mystique, and people didn't run around mouthing off all the time, telling how all the stuff they knew, or you didn't go buy a magazine and learn this, that, and another thing. So it's lost its mystique, and it's like a magician telling people how his magic wand works. Everybody knows a goddamn magic wand is a stick that's painted with probably a gold tip on it. And so the basic functions of it is show business. And there's a hell of a lot of show business to tattooing. But it's losing all of that. You know, you can just, well, it's a damn pity. And I guess I was part of it because I was media friendly and in San Francisco and loved women, and they come by, they liked the little butterflies and got those articles and all that stuff. And so I'm just as much in as blame as anybody. So if I was religious, and when I got up in front of St. Peter's, he would send me directly for hell for fucking a good thing up.